My name is Dan Stachofsky. I have been on a journey around electromagnetic research and the impact it has on people, plants, and animals for about a decade, a little bit more. Started with a personal journey for my daughter. I didn't even know about EMF at the time. I just knew her immune system was really under functioning and her mitochondrial was really below function. And so I got into it through that door. And then the world that opened up to me was just I had no idea the opportunity to improve the quality of life everywhere we go. And so I'm EMF researcher, functional nutritionist that's in training. I'm very close to being done, but maybe by the time this is posted, I'll actually be certified with that, and creating a community where people, plants, people and farmers and pet owners can really come together to be energetically viable in this very modern tech drenched age that we live in.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
So with you, Marlene.
So I've been a veterinarian for 41 years and traditional as all of us start out. And then there's that life-changing event that we all get to experience that takes us into our purpose and our passion. So mine was a horseback riding accident with my youngest daughter and one of our show horses. And the horse had reared in the air. No one told my daughter to bail off to safety when that happens. And so she was literally dangling from the reins, being pulled. She was pulling the horse over backwards. And the number one cause of rider's death when a horse rears is actually falling and crushing on their rider. So we had a 50-pound child and a 2,000-pound horse, and it wasn't going to look pretty. So as the horse was trying to get back on the ground, my daughter was literally the fulcrum pulling her over backwards. So when the horse hit the ground, there was not space between the two of them. But prior to her actually falling over, the horse squatted on her left hind leg and pushed herself as hard as she could to the opposite side. And I'm literally standing in front at the rail watching this happen in slow motion. And the horse was trying to move away from the child. But when she hit the ground, you couldn't see space between child and horse. So I jumped over the fence, and as I was running towards my daughter, the horse got up and my daughter was still laying on the ground with her eyes closed. And I really didn't know what I was going to find. And I called her name and she opened her eyes. And by the grace of God, she was fine. But that wasn't the end. And they do equine work. And I was told that they don't know exactly what was wrong with her at the time, but she wasn't safe to ride. And I could either put her out to a pasture for the rest of her life, or I could put her down, like in euthanasia. And that was not an acceptable answer to me. And it just really sparked that fire inside, kind of like what Dan went through, where you're going to find a solution. You're going to find answers. And the more I started finding solutions to fix the horse, I started incorporating every one of those solutions into my small animal practice. And my overriding theme, my motto, and my promise to my clientele and myself was that I would never utter the words to any pet owner ever again, "There's nothing more that can be done." And I've held that. I almost stammered one time where I looked at this case and I thought, I don't see how we're out of this. But the owner looked at me, a young girl, and she said, "You are my only hope." And I pulled it back together and I said, well, then let's try. So that's been 20 plus years now that I have not those words. Now, when you're going to make a promise like that, you have to have a really big toolkit, right? You're not going to go to battle with a little handgun. So I had to really start looking out of the box for solutions in multiple areas, which is what brought me to Dan. And if I can share, like kind of moving into where our conversation is going to go, I want people to leave with something that they can actionably do. And so the very first step in my 6-step program that I teach pet parents is we have to stop doing the very things that are causing the disease that we're dealing with. And, we want to live in a world where it's fast, cheap, and convenient, and you take a pill for the ill, a diet for the disease, and it miraculously goes away. But we're not living in that world anymore. And we have to start taking responsibility. So if I may just go through the 6 steps, because that's where it's going to tie in for Dan.
Yes.
So step number 1, we have to start feeding our pets a species appropriate diet. If you watch National Geographic, or if you're old enough in the US like me, we had Wild Kingdom. And when you watch these documentaries on what carnivores eat, they eat another animal in the state that they killed it in. They don't make it into a kibble and they don't preserve it for later eating. So 1, we need to feed a species appropriate diet. 2, we have to have clean, structured, filtered water because there's so many toxins coming in through the water. Our environment that we're living in, which our pets are in all the time, our cleaning materials, the microplastics that we're exposed to. We have to be very conscientious of the forever chemicals, the air quality, making sure we're filtering the air down to 1 micron. Water should be filtered down to 1 micron as well. And then all the products that touch our skin that our pets are touching. And even though they're not technically wearing clothes, they're laying on our bed, they're on our laps, we're holding them. So they're next to the fabrics that we're wearing. The next one are the ants that live in our brain. We have automatic negative thoughts, also called stinking thinking. And it's not that we should ignore that or suppress it. It's actually a wonderful guiding tool when we understand what our repeated thoughts are. Those are usually the clues to what we need to clear. So I encourage pet owners to start writing down what are the thoughts you have in the 24-hour period. And as they start to record what their thoughts are, I'm not good enough. I have issues. I'm not feeling well. I'm not whatever that is. They start to see a pattern. And then the last area, I left it last specifically for Dan, is dealing with the electromagnetic pollution that is everywhere now. It's not even a conversation to get rid of it. We're on a computer right now. And even though I'm hardwired, I remember when I built my house, everything was Wi-Fi. We were so excited, no more cables. And then 20 years later, I go back to the company and I said, can you please rehardwire me in all my rooms? And the guy looked at me like I was crazy because your pool can run on a smart meter, your appliances on smart meters, your smart meter on your home. And so everything has this massive amount of electromagnetic pollution, which is affecting ourselves and our pets in a really severe way. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Dan. And Dan, I really want you to also talk about that third leg of electricity coming in that's supposed to be the ground and how much dirty electricity is coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get to all of that because it directly affects both human health and pet health. If you have pets in the house, they're dramatically affected by it as well. So
well, I'm going to ask about that. So you talk about EMF health. Thank you, Marlene, as well. I'm a pet owner. I've got a beautiful dog called Barberra and saved my life. And I do everything in my power to make sure he's healthy and fit and obviously lives as long as he possibly can do for his breed and what he is, etc. So completely buy into everything else there. But I'm intrigued by the EMF. And I'll tell you why I'm also intrigued, because there was a time where I used to be an engineer, I would say, of Wi-Fi routers, modems. So people would have to ring when it didn't work, and I would be the person that would take the phone call. Once I had to learn a little bit about Wi-Fi waves and how it interacts, because I didn't know before then. I just thought you put a router in the house and that was it. Didn't realize thick walls, certain types of materials, it just bounces all over, it never goes anywhere. So it intrigues me. And probably as somebody that's got cancer, I'm intrigued by that. I mean, EMF is a phrase, obviously, that a lot of people, I've mentioned this at the beginning before we started, can interpret in their own way for each person. And some people will get it, some people won't get it, because we do have a lot of cynical people in the world at the moment. So Some people will think, oh, that's science. Some people will think and hear it and think fearfully. Some may hear it and think conspiracy, and we all know those types of people on keyboards at home. So before we go anywhere else, just because obviously we started with this, you talk about EMF exposure affecting pets or humans. What are you actually asking people to pay attention to? So that would be great to start with.
Well, well, Dan, before you answer that, because you brought up proof of what's happening, and Dan and I have done studies where we literally take something that has high EMF, like a little fan that runs on a USB, really, really high EMF. And I'll do a live blood study before exposure and just see what the blood looks like. And red blood cells are supposed to be separated nice and round. And then when we expose them to high EMF, those cells collapse together. They become sticky because the fourth phase of water collapses. And when that happens, we get a condition called rouleau. Now, the red blood cells, because they're stuck on top of each other, can't use their surface area to bring in oxygen deliver that to the tissue, and then pick up waste material and take it out of the body. We have study after study after study showing this effect, and then using Dan's devices to actually create that cell separation again.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
my mind's blown. So go.
Right. Yeah. It's like, when I think about EMF and I'm explaining it to people, I want to distinguish between natural and artificial, or natural and man-made, because there are natural EMFs that we all engage with every day. And the main one is from the sun, and the light from the sun is electromagnetic frequencies as well. And it's full spectrum, but it's a different form. It's a very natural form of EMF that our bodies throughout the eons and have evolved to understand and work with and interact with. And we get information and energy from that natural EMF that powers up our cells and drives the vitamin D hormone production. So there are lots of beneficial forms of natural EMF that nature has, we understand. It's like having a guitar and all the strings are tuned and you play a chord and it just sounds beautiful. That's what natural EMF is. But the artificial, which is man-made, and it comes from, like you mentioned, Wi-Fi routers, cell phones, cell towers, even the electricity on the electrical grid. So the transmission lines or the electrical wires in your home, these are a different form of EMF. And it's like having your guitar tuned but it's not in tune. And now you play that chord and it's chaotic, and that chaos creates stress in the cells. Instead of it being information that the body can use, it's information the body has to react to. And when it reacts, it tries to protect itself from that noise, that chaos that it's receiving. So what we want to do is we want to understand that the environment around us has a really significant impact in our health, the health of our cells and the health of our immune system. And we underestimate the effect the environment has on our immune system. So that's kind of the context of what we're involved in. And so if you go into a room and you turn a light switch on, you just respond to the light. The problem is today you have natural light, you have LED lights that are artificial, digital, and have flicker rates. You have Wi-Fi routers. You have all these different kind of forms of light that our body has to interpret every second of the day. And the question is, how resilient are you going to be? Now, when people say they're EMF sensitive, what they're saying is that their nervous system is having a response that's uncomfortable. And that can lead to, unfortunately, 3 to 5% of the population is severely sensitive, meaning their skin feels like it's crawling, it's on fire, their head is hurting, their eyes are really stressed out. There's all sorts of these reported symptoms. There's over 65 different symptoms that the National Health Institute of Health in the U.S. reports, and in Europe, they also have their reporting platforms that show that EMF sensitivity is actually something that is considered a workplace accommodation in parts of Europe and Sweden, and I think there's in Norway as well. There's accommodations just like you would have to do if I was disabled with in some form. You'd have to accommodate.
Yeah, I think we call it reasonable adjustments.
Right. So it's understood that this is a reality. The question is, what do you do about it, or how do you address it? Because if it's everywhere, like Dr. Siegel said, this is an environmental, it's not just a inconvenience anymore. It's kind of a health crisis. And that's what we're talking about. So that's how I frame it for people to understand. Not all EMF is just blanket bad. There's natural that is healing, like get in the sun, let the sun have its natural purpose, but also recognize that when you're inside, and right now I have lights on, but my lights I try to, do as much incandescent, but know that when you're indoors, you're getting a different form of light that our body has to respond to. And we want to be wise and aware of that to make good decisions.
And just for viewers, the natural you're referring to, if you wanted to actually visualize it, we're talking the northern lights or the southern lights, the aurora borealis or the aurora australis. Yeah. So that's where you can see what's hitting us from the sun, because people might be thinking, what is this? What's getting me? But that's what if you're lucky, you get to see that, don't you? And obviously I've been very lucky to see it, but that's fantastic. Right. Thank you. Now,